I gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about marketing lessons from Ryan Holiday and the Daily Stoic with the help of our special guest, VP and Head of Marketing at FourKites, Amanda Dyson. Amanda, how are you?
I'm great, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful to have you here today. We are going to dig right into it here. And why the heck did you pick Ryan Holiday and the Daily Stoic?
Yeah. So again, I appreciate you guys inviting me on this show. I think when I went and looked at some of the categories that had been talked about, there's some clear ones that stick out, like talk about The Office or, your favorite book, your favorite piece of kind of content. And something that I do every day is read Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic email that he sends out. And I feel like there's a lot of really good parallels and kind of lessons learned from what he does and who he is. So for marketing specifically. So if I could, ramble a few of them off, I think that something that makes him a tremendous marketer is that he really believes in what he's selling us, right? He's created this brand that is a lifestyle. Stoicism is a philosophy. So there's a lot of high value attached to it and how you live your life. But I think he does a lot of other great things that just all of us as marketers could learn from. He's a storyteller. There's a lot of repetition in his message. So, right, that's a key kind of marketing tactic. His messages have very practical application. So he's able to take something that's more complex and root it down into your, don't be mad at your neighbor, driving down the street or the road rage kinds of things, just like very practical. And I feel like it's all fostered and rooted in these core values or the Stoic virtues, which you could look at your brand pillars in the same kind of light. So he's done just a tremendous job in my mind of building a community, has a really loyal following. I mean, all of the things that a marketer dreams. So I love his message and thought it'd be fun to talk about today.
And we're going to dig way into that here in a second. But first, let's talk about supply chain and the cool stuff that you're doing at FourKites. Tell us what your role entails.
Yeah, I would love to. So I've been at FourKites just over 8 months running their global marketing team. So FourKites is a global leader in AI supply chain technologies. We kind of got our start in real-time transportation visibility, and that's evolved as AI has, really come to the forefront with agentic AI and generative AI and all of those kinds of things. So I've been in supply chain, B2B SaaS marketing like 20 years now, which is funny for me to say. But when FourKites kind of came calling, it was really my dream job to be able to come and run the show. It's what I've been working towards my whole career. So I've just really been enjoying learning from my leadership, frankly, across product marketing and PR and creative. Those are not my areas of expertise. I come from a demand generation, field marketing, account-based marketing background. So one of my biggest joys is being my team's biggest cheerleader and celebrating all of their successes. My job is to make them successful. And that old saying, all boats rise, which I don't believe is a Stoic saying, but, still one that I like to preach and practice with my team.
Meredith, what the heck is the Daily Stoic? And who's Ryan Holiday?
That's right. So now the Daily Stoic is a newsletter created by Ryan Holiday. And it was after he found success with his book of the same name.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And Ryan is a marketer. He's the former director of marketing for American Apparel. And now he's a writer and media strategist. And he's writing specifically about Stoicism.
So I learned about Ryan back in 2014 because I was getting out of the Army, and I was going into sales and I was selling to marketers. And I was like, dove into just like reading marketing books, and I found Trust Me, I'm Lying. And I was like, this is like the greatest, book ever. And one of the biggest things that he talks about in this book, which one did this come out? So it's published in 2012. So it was really interesting. But one of the things that he talked about in this book was about Tucker Max. And I don't know if either you remember Tucker Max. So my first college roommate was like obsessed with Tucker Max. Thought it was like the funniest thing ever. I thought it was juvenile, if you ask me. Anyways, I just remember being like, dude, this guy is lying. Like, these are not real stories. And whether or not they are, or, whatever, is kind of irrelevant. But as a marketer, or as a soon-to-be marketer, because I went into marketing the next year, it blew my mind, because I remember sitting there in my, college, I would say dorm room, but it was a barracks because it's the Army. I remember sitting there, like, listening to this dude just like tell me all about Tucker Max and how funny these things were or whatever, and reading this, and all the crazy stuff that he did. And then reading this book about marketing years later that explains all of the marketing tactics that went into marketing this crazy, this crazy guy and this crazy thing. And the fact that he worked for American Apparel, which is like, I knew American Apparel. And I just was like, literally blew my mind. I'm like, how is this even a job? Like, how is this even a job that people have? And I was like, one of the reasons of many, but I was like, I gotta get into this field. And so I just like, I was so that, and Gary Vee, jab, 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 right hook. Back then, I don't think I've watched a Gary Vee video in like 4 years, or more, I don't even know. But anyways, I just like finding out things about a marketing thing that you were marketed to was just like a mind-blowing experience. And like just the way that he translated that in that book and all of those things. So I knew him there first before he was a Stoic. Never had talked about Stoic philosophy. I don't even think he had discovered Stoic philosophy then, or at that point in time. I sort of just knew him as a marketer. And now it's the vast majority of his life is about Stoicism. So anyways, it's just crazy. We'll get into lessons later, but that was like my entry point into Ryan Holiday. And I bought, or got given, I shouldn't say bought, I reached out to Ryan's team because his book, The Obstacle is the Way, which is about Stoic philosophy, I had it when I did a startup conference for military veterans back in 16. I literally gave out copies of that book because I was like, oh, this is amazing. So anyways, it's his lessons, and I learned Stoicism literally from Ryan as well. And he all the time talk about like, read the actual things, read meditations, do all this stuff, which I've never done. But I'm like, Ryan, that's why I'm subscribed to your newsletter, buddy. You got to tell me that stuff. So anyways, but Amanda, your entry point was very different, right? And you are a marketer, or obviously.
Yeah, very different. And my husband, I think, is the one who actually started reading, like, there's a Daily Dad email, and, he's got his journals and his like daily meditations and all those kinds of things. Funny thing about Marcus Aurelius, I think this is his birthday month, actually, because Ryan's been talking a ton about meditations and picking that up and reading it, and really, like I said, repetition, right? And really encouraging people to go and read that. But I think as far as like his writing goes, that's just it's a very approachable, kind of style. And it's often funny, to your point. Like, I think he, again, kind of like makes really complex philosophical concepts easy to understand. And in the case of Trust Me, I'm Lying, like flip the lid off of these just like hilarious, often like unbelievable things. So yeah, his entry point, I guess, into Stoicism is kind of, seems like it wasn't a straight road either.
Well, I was curious just listening to you two talk, because I was reading about it and it seemed like he was a pretty controversial marketer. Yeah.
Do you know the Tucker Max story, Meredith?
Not entirely. I was reading a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'll just give you the basically the Cliff's notes here. Cliff's notes were founded by a guy named Cliff, which is amazing. I always thought it was like you jump off a cliff or something and you learn. I don't know. Anyways, so basically, Tucker Max had these series of sort of lewd, like drug and sexual encounters, these stories, right? And basically, they were very risque and very over the top. And one of the ways that Tucker Max marketed the book was, and with Ryan was the one who marketed the book, was basically reaching out to people who he thought would hate the book. And it was, again, there's like, not to get into the misogyny part of this or any other part of this. This is an academic exercise on the show. But just the idea that the strategy was to target people that would absolutely hate it so that they would be loudly outspoken. And I think that like, you see sort of in a similar timeline to juxtapose that with like Chelsea Handler, where she wrote My Horizontal Life, very, very similar tell-all, very sort of like sexual exploits type thing, which ends up being extremely popular in sort of a different demographic. And she had a much larger cachet. And now you see like Call Her Daddy of clearly like, and Howard Stern's show, clearly we like this type of content as humans. We like to hear that other weirdos are doing weird stuff. But, or maybe it makes us all feel more normal. Anyways, just the idea that it was the complete opposite of way that you would bring a book to market, is like target the haters and use social media and network effects to launch the book. So things like that, controversial things, how to like hack growth and rather than sort of going at it the traditional way, which is looking at things and said, if I have $0 to market this, how would I go to market? Sort of changes your framing and your reference. Man, I don't know did I get that right?
Yeah. I mean, and I do think it's kind of fascinating. It goes back to the old adage, like no publicity is bad publicity, right? Like
right.
It's getting a lot of people to, and it's funny you mentioned Chelsea Handler, like High Vodka, It's Me Chelsea, or whatever that book is. Like it is funny. It is relatable. But I mean, I think that to me, that's more the point of like, we are all human and it is all relatable and we all mess things up. So, that kind of can draw you towards it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, to tie into the Stoicism conversation, which we're about to talk about, is when Ryan read Meditations, and he's talked about this a million times, that one of the first stories that Marcus Aurelius is talking about is, or one of the first things that Ryan talks about is like, he's reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and the emperor doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And he was like, oh my gosh, like I'm reading the mind of someone who is the most powerful person on earth at the moment. And he doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And it's like, that's the same thing that I deal with, which is not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. And so it's just like that idea of relatability, obviously, is so core to sort of Ryan's existence, I think, or his content existence, maybe.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Well, I know, to talk a little bit about Ryan's connection to Tucker Max, it kind of seemed like he was out of line with his beliefs. And now this like gearing towards Stoicism is like he kind of found this sort of like righteous path for himself, which I thought was an interesting shift. But
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. When I think of Stoicism, I always think of like Hemingway. That's been like my like touch point with it, but I didn't realize that it's actually like really old philosophy. And so when I was looking into this, it's based on 4 tenets, which are courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. So that's a lot of what he writes about. And it draws from philosophers that we've mentioned, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. And Ryan said, often people look to Stoicism to get them through periods where there are large societal shifts that they can't control. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so he found Stoicism when he was 19. He went to a conference with radio and TV host Dr. Drew Pinsky, and Ryan went up to him and was like, can you give me a book recommendation? And that's when Pinsky, he said, turned him on to Stoics. And he said, to say that recommendation changed my life does not go far enough. It has, in fact, directed the entire course of my life. So he's been interested in it for a long time. And in 2014, he ended up writing the book, The Obstacle is the Way, which Ian, you mentioned. And that was actually his third book, but his first on Stoicism. And then 2 years later, he would write the Daily Stoic on recommendation from his agent. And that's what the newsletter sort of grew out of. And he said, one of the reasons we created the Daily Stoic was to give people a place to get a sampling of all the big three, which I think he means Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. And then some of the others like Zeno and Cleanthes. I always try to explain that the vast majority of people are turned off to philosophy because of how it's historically been taught. But if you sell them on what philosophy can do for them, they're much more open to it. That's what my writing is about. And I'm going to bring Stoicism to as many people as I can that way. And he added, most writers are dependent on an agent or an editor at a magazine or at a book publisher. But when I started the Daily Stoic, I wanted to write directly to my audience. So in 2024,
just to expand on that really quick. Like, that's all of our goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now. But then in 2014, the laws of like, you figure this is like, you know, at that time, writing a book is the seminal thing that you can do to make yourself, make your brand. I mean, that's maybe not true. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but like, it is it's definitely the point of being a writer, right? Is you write the book, you get the publisher, they publish the book, you make the money, you know, you get the front end, you maybe get some back end, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is like, his agent being like, start a daily blog, which can't seem so obvious, directly for your audience, where you make $0 with no upfront and there's no monetization. Again, it's like, it wasn't obvious at the time. Even though blogging in 2014, this is why you always feel late and you're actually early. Like, you'd think like blogging is like mastered, newsletters mastered, you know, marketing automation comes out and, you know, it's already well and good at that point in time. Tons of tools, tons of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, so anyways, just for some color there of like why he's like, most writers do the agent and editor, magazine, book publisher, whatever, is because you got to figure out a way to make money. And you ain't going to make it writing a blog.
I think it gets back to though the way he's been able to foster this community and like loyal following. Like, that's the value of the newsletter now, right? It's, you're giving that content away for free, but he's getting paid in a lot of other ways. So at the end of the day, it's brilliant. This was, you're right. This is before the age of influencers and all that kind of stuff, right? Getting paid to like do those kinds of things.
Yeah. And think about how many, so daily since 2014, I'm not a math expert, but that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And I guarantee you that the first year he did not have a lot of followers. And this is, I think, an important, I'll jump on the takeaway now, but it's like, this is such an important thing for marketers, where it's like, I know that you're judged on next quarter. I know that we all are, but it's like, you gotta at least think long-term. That it's like, what if this runs for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What will be the legacy impact? Like, I always go back to like Dreamforce. You're like, when they made the first Dreamforce, they didn't know they were going to make 20. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they did, because they made, you know, something that was repeatable. But it's like, I guarantee you that first year was tough for him.
You got the big risks, though, is where you get the big rewards. But I think you're right. It's hard to make things stick as a marketer, because you do have to try to prove that ROI as rapidly as possible, you know, and drive your pipeline and engagement and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I bet that first year he was probably writing books on the side just to make sure he got some income coming in.
Yeah. And he's a best-selling author, right? He's like, he already has at that point in time 3 books. Yeah. What he could have done was not do that and just write more books. Yeah. Right? Like, that's the better move, quote unquote. Yeah. And he still did do other stuff, but you get my point.
Totally.
Anyways, so flash forward to 2024. Meredith, what happened?
Yeah. So in 2024, so last year, his email newsletter, so the Daily Stoic, grew in subscribers by over 50%. I was reading about how he started, and he said he had like a book list, a book recommendation newsletter that he would send out. I think it was something like monthly. And that's how he got his first 10,000 subscribers. And he said, other than that, it's been word of mouth. Mm-hmm. So again, last year it grew by over 50%. Now he sends his newsletter to over 320,000 subscribers every morning, which is wild. So it's grown a ton. And the last thing I'll say is he shared this one quote from Marcus Aurelius that he says he likes as sort of a summation of Stoicism. So it goes, objective judgment, now at this very moment, unselfish action, now at this very moment, willing acceptance, now at this very moment of all external events. That is all you need. But Amanda, I wanted to ask you, because it sounds like the Daily Stoic newsletter is sort of part of your daily routine. So I'm wondering what got you to subscribe in the first place and what keeps you reading?
A lot of like the temperance thing, that's one of the areas I sort of struggle with. I'm not a super moderate person. Big personality, the work hard, play hard types of things. So like that really kind of stood out to me. I think his definitions of like justice as well. This isn't like justice in a courtroom. This is about fairness and kindness and, being nice to your neighbors. But there's been a few other like profound things that I've read and that I keep with me. One of the things, even recently, he's kind of talked about it is like, there are people in your lives who are meant to be jerks, and they are meant to put obstacles in your way, and they're meant to be mean and nasty and, turn your day upside down if you let it. So, I've got 2 young kids, so I'm constantly like, how do I control my own emotions? Be in charge of how I feel, not about how they feel, not about how, my spouse or my coworker feels. So those kinds of things, I feel like he does things in such a, bite-size, practical way that you can like hold on to it and kind of come back to it in your day-to-day. So that's kind of what kept me coming back. And since, you mentioned word of mouth, I've shared the email with people. I think it's a great introduction into Stoicism. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, move on. But I think it's a good kind of glimpse into, if somebody is into Stoicism, you can find out what that means. When my husband first started really reading the books and things like that, I was one of those naysayers that thought Stoicism just means you're unemotional and nothing bothers you and, you're made known, and I was totally way off.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to finish a point on the marketing piece. So 40% open rate, 3% click-through rate for his
Amazing.
list of, whatever it is, right? Still, after years and years and years, pretty darn cool. I don't know what the list size, is as of, today in 2025, but it's clearly the well that he goes to for everything. And I think it's just like that Seth Godin talks about this, and I think it's so true, which is Seth Godin's been writing a daily blog for I think like 10 years or something like that. So similar. And he said that so in similar to going to the gym, when you write every day, that it becomes the question to you stops becoming if you should write, but what you should write. And going to the gym, it's like, not should I go to the gym today, but what should I do when I'm at the gym? And I think that, and having that list of things on your phone or wherever you keep ideas of stuff that you could write about and creating the time on your calendar and blocking your calendar for writing is super important. And I think for me, the way that I do this is like Wednesdays, I block an hour with me and Colin, our head of content. And we talk about the thing I'm going to write, and then I write it in that hour. Otherwise, it doesn't get published. And then we publish on Friday mornings. And for me, the thing that I need is I need to block the time on the calendar, and I have a running list of things, and I usually pitch a few ideas to Colin on the call, the beginning of the call, and then I'll go write it. But I have a structure. I have like a style that I have that I like, that is how I like to write. And it's just like, if it goes beyond that hour, then I have to edit. That it's like, this is too much information, because I have a penchant for overwriting. But anyways, just on the actual writing portion, I think it's very commendable to write a daily newsletter.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how hard that is.
Yeah.
because I do it once a week and it's pretty hard. But I think that for me, the key is creating the space, creating a list of ideas, and then creating an accountability mechanism that allows you to deliver in that space. And like for me, I like to have Colin on there so I can bounce some ideas off. And then it just gives that little bit of editor feel for you, where it's like, is this tracking to you, or is this like kind of dumb? And then I ship it. And then it's like, I just say, this is it. This is all we got. And then he schedules it to go live.
Yeah. And then it's out there. I totally agree with you. Scheduling the time is huge. When you said it's not if, it's what, I was going to say it's not if, it's when. Like when you're going to like make the time and do that. And it's prioritization, right? So we learn that in the business world. So you got to prioritize certain things. And so I agree. I think a daily email, I have a blog that I can't even call it a blog because I think I write once a year. It's one of those things whenever I find the time and the energy and the idea that I think is fun. So
yeah, and part of the reason, for me, why I wanted to do this show was that like I was meeting marketers and I would ask them what they like, and they were inspired by things that weren't B2B marketing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, well, tell me about that stuff. I want to know what you're inspired about. And wouldn't you know it, like the vast majority of ideas for my blog come from Remarkable and doing this show, and like what we create together with our guests on the show, and like jamming ideas together. And then I go, oh shoot, I should write about that. And then I jot it down either on the call or, afterwards, and then write about it later. So I think the other thing is sort of, you need the impetus for, you need to figure out what inspires you. And if you're an introvert, maybe that's spending time alone or meditation or whatever. If you're an extrovert, maybe it's like going out and going to events or, watching movies or watching TV shows, or maybe it's being around industry peers, or maybe it's not being around industry peers, or whatever the thing that gets you to go, oh, that's a great idea, to write it down. You got to do those. I once heard that there's no such thing as writer's block. There's just reader's block. That if you don't have, that if you can't think of what to write, that means you're not actually putting enough inputs into the system in order to get the things firing. And it could be reader's block or talker's block. You're not having conversations if you're that type of person. So the inputs that create the outputs, the ideas that get written down need to come from somewhere. And for most people, just sitting down and doing a think. Although everybody swears by meditation, I've done it a few times. I really liked it, and I can't figure out time. So my goal, I'm working on it. I promise. Promise to you, Amanda, 5 minutes a day. That's what I'm working on.
5 minutes a day is a lot, honestly. I think if you can squeeze in a few deep breaths, I do it usually when I'm sitting in my daughter's room and she's brushing her teeth and taking forever for bedtime. I try to take a few deep breaths, because otherwise I find myself getting really frustrated with her.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know that song and dance. So one of my first entrances into Stoic philosophy was they're talking about this guy, and I forget his name, but basically his wife or his family is brutally killed. And they go to him and he's a Stoic, and they're like, hey, aren't you going to go get revenge for this thing? Like, aren't you like, mad and upset and all this sort of stuff? And he basically says sort of like, everything that I have, like, I always tear up whenever I say this story. But he's basically like, they couldn't take anything from me because like everything I already have, sort of thing.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And like
even if they killed me, you can't take anything from me.
Yeah. And I just like, man, I remember hearing that. This was probably like 8 or 9 years ago. And I was just like, literally like, changed the way I thought about the world, where you're like, damn, like, that's just so crazy that, because when I first read it, I was like, well, this guy clearly didn't like his family if he doesn't even care that they're gone. Like, how could you possibly think that way, right? And then you think about it further. And and anyways, it's just like, it's a crazy, the idea of like not seeking revenge or seeking violence that someone caused you harm, or that's like not a productive thing. Is like mind-bending, And so, anyways, that always just stuck with me and I think grounds me in the present when I'm like with my family or friends or doing whatever, in a way that, going into my, going from my 20s to my 30s, I think I would not have possibly have felt as grounded if I didn't have that lesson. You know what I mean? And like, I've been through a bunch of crazy stuff since then, and like remaining grounded in those times is like super important. And just some stuff on that where it's like, acceptance of morality, grief is a natural emotion, focus on what you can control, finding meaning in loss, not seeking revenge, living the present. Like that one story solidified all of those lessons where like I could read a listicle about Stoic philosophy and not understand it. But when you hear the story, then it's like solidifies in you because you go, well, what if that happened to me? And this is just like my takeaway for this is that the stories are so powerful and Stoic stories are super powerful because philosophy can feel heavy and weighty, that bringing those things back to reality. Like we all know that, Romeo and Juliet, warring families, kill these two kids. We know that's bad, right? That's why it's a great story, but what is the thing that I internalize in my life? It's like, well, I'm not going to have a warring feud with another family. You know what I mean?
Not today.
You know what I mean? So anyways, that's the thing for me. A big takeaway from all of this is that grounding in story to understand how to apply in your own life.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The storytelling, I think, is huge. To communicate it effectively and for us to understand it and be able to relate to it, right? Gets back to how do you make this ancient philosophy relatable? And something that I love about it is Ryan Holiday also does these like challenges. He does them a couple times a year now. He used to, as far as I know, only used to do like a New Year's challenge, but I signed up for a few of them. And so is my husband. And they make you do some things that are kind of hard, some things that are kind of weird, go stand in a graveyard, just a lot of things. But like the whole idea is Stoicism and is there to improve your life. So, to say like they can take nothing else from me is to say like I have control of my mind and my spirit, my soul, like they can take my body, they can take all these kinds of things, but they kind of can't take that. I think it is very grounding. And I think that when it kind of comes full circle, when you think about what he's marketing, it is, call it self-improvement, like those kinds of things. But like the philosophy is there not just to teach you, but really to be like things to live by and improve your overall quality of life. So I think that that's another reason why people are drawn to it. And in times of change and turmoil, like Meredith was alluding to earlier, I think in our political climate, Stoicism comes up a lot. And he talks about, tough things that people need to hear.
I love the challenge thing. I remember listening to Tim Ferriss a number of years ago on his podcast, and he does this really cool exercise, which I did. Gosh, I haven't done in a while, and I should probably do. Ferriss does this thing where probably, I don't know if Ryan Holiday taught him this or if they talked about it on the show. It's probably, I'm pretty sure that I know that they've done a bunch of episodes together, and I remember listening to him. But one of the things that he did was basically like, is you go back at your previous year and you look at everything you did that like you loved and everything that you didn't, and you cut the things that you don't. I'm sort of, is that?
That's right. I've done that. Yeah. You literally go look at your calendar.
Yeah.
All the scheduled stuff.
Yep. And one of the things that I did it with my wife, and what we did was we did it with our photos. So we like looked at our photos and looked at all of the like memories that we made over the course of a year. And we're like, oh, that was fun. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was like, so let's do more of those. And also reminds you to take more photos. You also go back and look at how many like memories you made, which is really fun.
Yeah. It is fun.
But that was a super helpful exercise. And Ferris in this episode, and then it was like sort of like you have to cut one big thing. And I remember in this year, and I don't know if he still does this or whatever, but at this time, he cut angel investing. He was like, this doesn't bring me joy anymore, or enough joy to want to keep doing it. She's like, this year I'm gonna stop doing angel investing. And I was like, that's like a crazy thing. Like when you're an angel investor, like it's like part of his job. I just remember sitting there being like, that's wild. Like that you could redefine your life on just like doing an exercise with yourself.
Taking inventory. I feel like it's and I think that cutting something out can be harder than we're always adding things, right?
Yeah.
Do more of this, do more of that. Cutting things out, I definitely think is more of a challenge. So good for him.
Yeah.
Matt McConaughey, he did something similar.
Oh, really?
I forget what he cut out. It was like his music label, or there was something, and it was he did a interview with Ryan, and it was something big, and it was the same kind of concept of like, this doesn't bring me joy anymore, and it's pulling away from these other areas of my life. So
I think I heard that, or maybe you told me that.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think if you were to take a sort of B2B marketing lesson from that, especially with content, it's like, are you making something that the other side really loves? Mm-hmm. Truly.
Yeah.
Do they really love it? And we talk about ROI. We're about to talk ROI in a second. But to me, what's memorable, what's exciting, that's stuff that people go, oh, I love that ad.
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't every ad you do me, I love that ad?
Yeah, but it's not.
But it's not. Shouldn't every piece of content be like, this is so good?
Yeah.
And today, the way that algorithms work, especially with social, I mean, you're talking about every piece of content does need to be great. At least you need to have a hunch that it could be great. It might not break out. You should have a hunch, really be devoted to making 10 things that people love rather than 100 that they are lukewarm on.
Yeah. It's tough. I think that as we talk about, Stoicism really being intended on improving your life and those kinds of things, that's something I've actually stuck to in my career before I even found Stoicism, was like, we sell software. We sell software that people use to do their jobs and run their supply chains, but it's people that are running it. So how can you put out content that's talking about making their lives better? Gain back 9 hours of your week so you can have 9 holes on the golf course. Ran that campaign 10 years ago. But just like making their lives better. And I think it gets back to storytelling and being relatable. There was a whole article I read recently that, was talking about the algorithms and obviously like generative AI. And you go on LinkedIn, and it used to be really authentic to write this like heartfelt post about a challenge that you overcame and, at the end of the day, what it resulted in. But is a lot of that stuff even real anymore? So I really challenge my teams to get back to storytelling and to get back to, you got to break out of the box. So let's do something wild. Some of my favorite marketing campaigns I've ever done have just been like weird stuff, bobbleheads or, robots on the beach, just like random things that is not B2B software, but it breaks the mold and it gets something done. I think Ryan's done that with his marketing of Stoicism. He's broken the mold, right? Like he reinvigorated this ancient philosophy. And so that's definitely a lesson I think we can learn from them too on content.
Yeah. And we'll dig into robots on the beach. Okay, so zooming out, tell me more about how content fits into your overall marketing strategy.
So actually, when I joined the company, we were just huge content creators. The company had been through a lot of change, especially the marketing team, and we didn't have a lot of outbound, spend, if you will. So the team was just creating all this content, which is great because then you've got this library, this inventory. But I feel like the change we tried to make was a couple of things. I think in our industry, making the customer sort of the champion of the story and having them tell the story instead of you're talking about yourself and your products is huge. Taking more of that consultative approach. Gets back to how do we make your lives better? Focus on their challenges and things like that. And then, frankly, we're a small team and we've got to scale. So we are all about how do we take one thing and reuse it in different ways. I think if we look at Ryan and his newsletter, I kind of mentioned his repetition. I don't think he sends the exact same newsletter, multiple times, but there's certainly similar messages where you can go back in your archives and dig those things up again and present it in a different way. So, content is huge. It drives all of our internally and externally, all of our activities, but you got to be really smart about how you do it and how you use it, because you're competing with so much noise. It can definitely be challenging to again, break that mold.
What's working for your audience right now?
So we do a lot of social, we do a lot of paid advertising as well as kind of driving things organically. So we're big on driving that collective network, which I think is, again, kind of your community. Happily, face-to-face is kind of coming back. So, I'm going to a conference in a couple of weeks that I haven't been to since 2020. So I love that. Getting back face-to-face with people, I think is huge. And that's helping us to drive a lot of our ROI. And I think just personalization too. So we do a lot of account-based marketing and getting really personal in our messages. It's definitely, those things seem to be working.
What type of social are you doing? Video, or are you doing written?
We do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, YouTube, actually. So we do quite a bit of video, and we are big into testing, different things. So we'll try all different types of ad formats and we have our executive team, posting regularly, getting them super involved. So that's probably the biggest way we're using social. And then any campaign, we want to bolster it with our organic kind of side of the house too. So you're just being consistent in your message and getting all that out there.
How did you think about going after, YouTube as a channel?
It definitely was something my team brought to me, and I was hesitant. I think that what did I just see is YouTube on the NASDAQ today? They celebrated 20 years or something.
20 years, yeah. That's crazy.
And think how they started. It was kind of more like slapstick and sharing funny things. And now your kids will do all their research on YouTube for a school project. So I think once I saw the results and just the different platforms, their media platform and their reach, it's actually been really productive. But I was certainly hesitant. It didn't kind of make sense. Similar with, with your Instagram or, those kinds of things. I never would have thought that they would get these influencers and the money that they're able to make. But, that's the way of the future, social selling.
Yeah. I just to, lend some outside opinion, it seems like on your YouTube channel, you have customer stories that are shot sort of professionally, some on site, some not. You have thought leadership, videos. Some of that stuff is very relevant, tariffs are coming, things like that. You have this series, FourKites Around the World. You had a series years ago called Ship Shape, how to optimize international shipping. You're doing shorts, which seems like those are working pretty well. So you're really diversifying. And then you mentioned, essentially executive LinkedIn thought leadership. You're really looking at a bunch of different, modality, whatever you want to call them, consumption methods and habits here, not just sort of just saying we do video, but being more thoughtful in sort of the way that you're presenting video.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, to toot the horn of my team. They just do a tremendous job and are really thoughtful in looking at those types of formats or where we're putting things out. So that's just been fun to watch them shine.
How do you think about ROI for content?
So my team gets tired of hearing me say pipeline, possibly. But like I said, when I came in, the team was really going through transition of FourKites is only 10 years old. There was a giant, brand awareness phase in the company and huge PR budgets and those kinds of things just to get our name out there. And now we have to switch gears, to be a little bit more demand generation oriented. So I don't care if you're in creative, you're in demand gen, and pipeline is important to you. So being able to set up our dashboards that, track back to our KPIs, to our corporate and our, chief revenue officer, OKRs, all of our objectives, all of those kinds of things has been really key. And then just reporting, we report quarterly. So to your point, how long do things need to stick? We report on some more subjective or, tactical things on a quarterly basis. And then I'm just constantly like beating that drum. Where are we at on pipeline, against our goals? And everybody has to be focused on it and looking at it. So even if you have your own personal development or, career objectives, we all have to focus on pipeline.
Yeah. And I mean, that can be tough, like it can be tough to sort of look at like, okay, well, what's the ROI of that one webinar you did? Or, oh, we did that video shoot where we, sent a team to, a customer, in Ohio or, whatever it is. Like, do you look at things as individual or a broader piece of the whole or surrounding content? Because you're not going to, 113 views on video X. Like, there's no way to prove the ROI of that one video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But CFOs tend to want that sort of thing.
So, and I think that's why, your most productive things are always going to be like your website and trade shows where you're getting those conversions and you can speak like literal numbers. We do talk a lot of marketing metrics, your impressions and your clicks and, that kind of thing, especially when it comes to content. But we have a multi-touch attribution model too, which helps us to paint like the big picture, whether it be in a specific ABM account or we look at our trade shows, for instance, individually, like each one has a 4x ROI number, so there are some things that we can tie back to like very specifically, but
pipeline to spend.
Yeah. My preference is always, that's all great. And it all, again, boats rise, but like, I need to see what my overall contribution to pipeline is at the end of the day. And then those individual metrics become more of are we going to do this next year? Was there ROI tied to it? Or are we going to shift gears?
Yeah. I just, I see people really worried about, okay, we're going to do, let's cut the stuff that quote unquote doesn't drive the leads. And then all of a sudden, all of the halos around all of the brand stuff now makes the stuff that we were saying drove, conversions not work as well,
Yeah. We're in, that happens. It's happening, kind of for us as we speak. But I think it's one of those opportunities that you can get creative. So for instance, we're looking to tie kind of our PR and social together more firmly. There's firms and agencies out there that do, PR, AR, social, demand gen, like they kind of can tie all that stuff together. But then you're able to go say, that Wall Street Journal article did end up, we put it in a paid campaign and it did actually drive X number of, marketing and sales leads back to the business. So the more creative you can get, that gets back to reusing your content in kind of smart ways, I think can help with that. Because that stuff is not small ticket items and you lose that halo effect. It's hard to convince the CFO why that's important until it's too late.
I know you have FourKites Summit coming up and registration's about to open soon, and it's your first one as CMO. So I know you're excited about that. And you have your new intelligent control tower as a product, and y'all are doing a bunch with AI and digital twins and all sorts of cool stuff. Anything else that's coming up that's super exciting?
Yeah. So I'm pumped about our FourKites Summit that's coming up in August in Chicago. But yeah, the company underwent, a bit of an evolution, like I was mentioning earlier, kind of transitioning from that pure visibility platform into this intelligent control tower. And we really did that with our customers. I mean, they were the ones telling us like, hey, you're underselling yourself, just kind of coming at me with this like dots on a map. Your solutions do so much more. So it's going to be a really good experience for us to get in front of the right audience, tell the story, right? Like that's a big stage to be able to do that in front of these folks, and just continue to really up level for them, make them successful. That's the idea. So we're super excited. My team is going to kill it. I already know. So that's kind of the next big thing on our radar.
Last question here. What's a piece of advice that you give to other marketing leaders as they think about, marketing, brand, content?
Yeah, I like that question. And I feel like I get asked it kind of often. I'm into like mentorship and things like that as well, especially, younger generation, the next gen marketing leaders. I'm super into authenticity, even though it's kind of feels like a buzzword more so lately. But I do think you just got to be yourself, and you've got to be upfront and direct and clear. You want to make sure you've got alignment with the people on your team, that there's trust, mutual trust. I'm a big believer in, being able to give you autonomy. But with that, I also have high expectations and high accountability with high flexibility is sort of the way that I like to manage my teams. A book I'll kind of leave you with is Radical Candor. It's one of my favorite sort of professional books. And their main takeaway is in a leadership position, you should always care personally and challenge directly. So it's not to be confrontational, but it's meant to be very just upfront and direct and leave no sort of gray area. So that's the way I try to lead. And that's the best advice I could give.
Amanda, wonderful having you on the show. Oh my, it's Stilbo. I remembered it. That's the story of the person. His family, his city was sacked. That's what it was. Anyways, shout out to Stilbo. He said, "Nothing is lost. All my goods are with me." That's the quote. Anyways, Amanda, thanks so much for joining the show. Wonderful to chat Stoicism. Congrats on all the success of FourKites. For our listeners, you can go to FourKites.com, especially if you need a logistics platform and the intelligent control tower from visibility to autonomous action. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, that's all good. Thanks for having me on. It was great talking.
Awesome. Take care. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.